Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another Experts Roundtable. We're really excited. Today we're going to be talking all about VoIP and the secrets to successful VoIP deployment. Like we all know, switching to VoIP saves you a ton of money and also reduce your maintenance. But getting started with it can sometimes seem a little overwhelming, especially if you've never worked with it before. Luckily, we have brought in some reinforcements that are here to help, including experts from some of your favorite VoIP companies, including CenturyLink, Fusion, Avaya, West Unified Communications, and 8x8. So without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and start things off with a round of introductions so you guys can meet our panel of experts. Batting first, representing CenturyLink, everyone please welcome Debbie Montano. Debbie, welcome to the show. How's it going today?
It's going very well. I'm glad to be here.
Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at CenturyLink?
Sure. I am a lead sales engineer in our Advanced Technology Solutions team, and we support hosted VoIP, managed office, IQ SIP trunk, and I personally work with a lot of customers and designs for getting people started on VoIP.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much for joining us. And Debbie, where are you calling us today from?
Beautiful Denver, Colorado.
Colorado, wonderful. Very cool. Well, thank you again. Our next panelist comes to us representing Fusion. Please give a warm welcome to Greg Lewis. Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Justin. How you doing today? Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time and the opportunity, and Fusion also appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Very cool. Very cool. Love having you guys on. Greg, can you tell us about yourself and your role with Fusion?
Sure. So I'm the manager of the sales engineer team. I lead all the sales engineers. We do a lot of the pre-sales involvement with the sales teams, and we also handle the post-sales issues with the team. Fusion, as you know, pretty much provides all different type of cloud voice services, everything from cloud communications, from our voice platform to MPLS networks. And we also specialize in cloud computing technologies where we can provide hybrid solutions for all our customers.
All right, very cool. And Greg, where are you calling us today from?
I'm calling from our Herndon, Virginia office right outside of Washington, D.C. It's one of several offices we have throughout the United States.
All right, very cool. Our next panelist comes to us representing Avaya. Please welcome Mark Massingham. Mark, how's it going today?
Good, Justin. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm Mark Massingham. I'm with Avaya. Traditionally, we support the unified communications, contact center, customer experience solutions, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. And I actually specialize in the small to mid-sized business segment, run the product marketing teams within Avaya.
All right, very cool. And Mark, same question to you. Where are you calling us today from?
I am calling you from a very sunny Florida. And when I moved out here in 2001, which was a long time ago, it was either Florida or New Jersey, and I'm afraid Florida won out.
Well, with all due respect to New Jersey, I think you made a pretty wise decision.
I'm not knocking New Jersey, that's fine, but Florida just has that edge.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. Our next panelist comes to us representing West Unified Communications. Everyone give a warm welcome to Jason Smith. Jason, how's it going today?
Hey, it's going great, Justin. Nice to be here.
Okay, Jason, can you tell us about yourself and your role with West UC?
Sure, Justin. I'm the Director of Solution Design Engineering for West UC. I've been with the company a little over 10 years, and I support the pre-sales engineers on the front end and take all the way into implementation. As far as West Unified Communications, I mean, we enable customers to thrive through increased business efficiencies through using unified communications.
All right, very cool. And Jason, where are you calling us from today?
I'm calling from Louisville, Kentucky.
All right, very cool. And Jason, I think folks are already asking about the giant Jim Beam sign behind you today. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that Jim Beam site, it's one of their marketing sites. Louisville's on the Bourbon Trail here in Kentucky, so it's a nice place to take your clients to if they're in town for a nice little bourbon tasting.
I believe it. It's pretty smart office location, I must admit, for West UC. Nice job. Well done, guys. And last but not least, representing 8x8, please give a warm welcome to Albert Nardelli. Albert, how's it going today? Welcome to the show.
Excellent. Thank you. Calling from our 8x8 headquarters in San Jose. So happy to be in the show.
Very cool. And Albert, can you tell us about yourself and your role with 8x8?
So I'm in charge of sales engineering deployment services, and so pretty much I'm in charge of all our different projects that we deploy around the world, deploying 8x8 cloud solutions to many happy customers.
right, very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Albert. So once again, yeah, big thanks to all of our panelists. This looks like a really great show for us. Before we do go any further, I did want to cover a few housekeeping items. On your console, in addition to all of our faces, there are some widgets that we wanted to point out to you guys. On the bottom of your console, and I don't know if these colors are correct anymore, so bear with me, there is a brown widget that allows you to chat with other identities, I believe. You may have to play around to find out if that's still the case, but definitely I think a lot of you guys have already figured out the chat widget. If you haven't yet, go ahead and pop in and say hi. Our panelists will be in to a little chat later with you guys as well. But most importantly, there is a Q&A widget, which I believe is red, not entirely sure, but definitely if you guys have a question that you want to ask us, we're going to be taking all of your questions live over the air today, so make sure to get all your questions in. Our panelists are really excited to help you guys out and get you guys the answers that you need. And lastly, there is a green resource widget where all of our vendors have provided some great links to supporting content for our discussion today, so make sure to give those a look-see. And as a special event bonus, as a big thank you for all you guys for hanging out with us today, not one but two of you guys will be winning a LEGO Star Wars Imperial Star Destroyer. So good luck to all of you guys. May the Force be with you. And stick around until the end of the show. We'll be announcing our winners at the end of the show. Well, I wanted to start off, just to kind of level set a little bit. I think a lot of people, when it comes to VoIP, obviously it means voice over IP, but I think a lot of different people have different conceptions as to what vendors are offering when they say that they're our VoIP provider. Maybe we'll start with Debbie, and if any of you guys have anything to add about your respective organizations. Debbie, what exactly does voice over IP mean to CenturyLink as far as what you're providing to your customers?
Sure. Well, we have a number of different options, but a lot of people find that our hosted voice over IP, which is the brains of the phone systems in our cloud, and then you get nice Polycom handsets and phones at your site, or you can use soft phones, which is just a application on your computer or your smartphone. A lot of people find that is fits quite well, but voice over IP could also be delivering a SIP trunk that supports many calls into a premise-based phone system, or VoIP could be, just no phones at all, and just phone capabilities virtually to soft phones, etc. So we can provide all of that, and then the network infrastructure underneath it as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add in, just to add on what Debbie was actually saying there, so from Fusion standpoint, how we look at it, we pretty much look at what the customer requirements are. A customer comes with us with those voice over IP requirements. We take those requirements and we get a little bit more deeper dive into understanding exactly what they need, how we can make their actual facilities better over a voice IP network, and just outline the different requirements. Look at those different feature options that they're looking for. What's their disaster recovery plan they're planning on moving over to the industry. The voice over IP technology is pretty much the future of where customers are going to be going in this industry. So work well with them.
Yeah, and I'll also
I was going to share that. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that, if you're not ready to change your on-premise phone system and it takes a PRI or it takes a traditional, POTS line, plain old telephone service, you can also get integrated service where you get the VoIP, where it's VoIP to the premise and then, to your location, and then we have an integrated access device that can break out that traditional-looking PRI or traditional-looking POTS line, so you can get your toe in the water with VoIP and get some of the advantages of the cost savings and flexibility without necessarily even changing your on-premise phone system if you're not ready to go that far.
Absolutely.
And also,
Justin, sorry. Yeah, Justin, I'll just jump in there very briefly. VoIP also is a great mechanism to have a single infrastructure within a premise as well, rather than having two separate lines, if you like. It just means you can consolidate infrastructure, which cuts down costs and cuts down maintenance costs as well. So it's a great benefit for end users.
And also to add to it, from cloud perspective, IP also means mobility, means flexibility that can be used from any place in the world, also in any different endpoints. Doesn't matter if it's a hard phone or is it a soft phone, is it a mobile phone. All of this could be done through a simple uniform mean of IP communication, and then brings the entire communication to the next level, because easily you can also add not only simple voice communication, it's all about chat, it's about email. People today behave much differently than they were behaving 10 years ago, and that really all done primarily because of the IP and everything else that comes with that great technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I agree with Albert on what he's saying. I mean, our technology is pretty much, we look at what a desk phone is pretty much going out of the equation. I mean, the technology is pretty much this device here that I have in my hand. That's what all the millennials are going to in the future. They want to have the ability to be able to work remotely using this device. And soft phone capability is the technology that Voice over IP leads with.
Jason, let me go to you next. You know, one of the most common questions we get from IT pros, especially if they're looking to get started with VoIP, is how do I know if my network can support transitioning all of our phones into voice over IP? What type of recommendations do you guys have as far as starting out this analysis process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of things that you should take into consideration, and it's going to depend on what you're actually looking to do. So networks, the number one thing to look at to make sure that it'll support the technology. Voice over IP or VoIP to WSUC is actually the technology behind the service. So I mean, we're talking about using that technology to deliver hosted voice solutions to clients. So to ensure that the network will sustain, making sure that there's enough bandwidth to support that technology or those phone calls or whatever you're delivering from a VoIP perspective is very important, as well as looking at the local area network to make sure that whether it's the wiring infrastructure or the wireless technology, whatever is needed to deploy that service is in place. So I look at the network being the first place to start. WestUC believes in providing their services typically over managed services in an effort to provide the best possible product. When it comes to a hosted voice type solution where you can provide actually class of service. So looking at the network, making sure that will support it, and the ability to deliver that to service on your local area network is important as well. So looking at your switching infrastructure, your routing infrastructure, all those things come into play. Wiring infrastructure is a big thing. The technology is improving to a way now that you guys have mentioned a lot of good things, like whether it's a soft phone, whether it's a mobile device. It might not always be a hard phone. There's less and less people purchasing hard phones and putting them on desks today. It's probably one of the more costly pieces of the solution is the actual handset that sits on the desk. So a lot of people are looking at ways to kind of get around that, whether it's going to be, be that soft phone or that application that rides on a mobile device. But really looking at the network, looking at the wiring infrastructure, making sure that it will support it before you even dig into the things like looking at your contracts on the actual telco services and whatnot. Moving to a VoIP type solution allows you the ability to start doing things where centralizing dial tones, centralizing a lot of your applications and management. So it enhances the way that you do business, and it's important to make sure that the infrastructure is there to support it, I believe.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, just what Jason was talking about. So deep perfusion standpoint, we go a little bit further in understanding the customer's WAN and LAN topology. One of the things we do architect for a customer when we're discussing with them is failover. So disaster recovery is something that's very critical for a customer. We go in there and design it. We have the capability of failing over to a customer's existing data network. So that's how we go in there, we implement it, we design it, we make sure we have all the customer's requirement, and we implement it, we test it before it's actually turned up fully for a customer.
Yeah, Justin, I just want to touch on, in fact, a point that Debbie made earlier about the sort of softly approach. I mean, infrastructure is absolutely key to any successful VoIP implementation, whether it's on-prem or even whether it's in the cloud or a combination of both. So having the ability to have an on-premise deployment as well is key to a lot of people, because they're not going to go full everything just yet, and they're a bit shy. So having the network infrastructure on site is absolutely vital. If you want to avoid that kind of stuff, you've really got to start at base level, and that is making sure that you're now putting voice over your network, and that's the biggest priority in your network that you're going to have. So it's
Right.
really
Such a good impression that I actually thought you were buffering right there. As you
That's a great invitation.
I'll do a good impression.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
And I was going to say also that, you know, in terms of specifics, I mean, if you can inventory your switches, you know, sort of the ideal, the gold standard would be able to separate your VoIP traffic, and, you know, you may be looking at video as well, but just your VoIP on its own VLAN, and having every switch in the path treat that traffic with priority, because VoIP traffic doesn't actually take that much bandwidth. You know, even at G.711, one voice call, you know, with the headers and everything on it, you know, might only be about 90K per call each direction, but it's very sensitive to delay, latency. You know, there's a big file transfer. I used to work for a company years ago, and my boss worked from home sometime and had used VoIP on his soft phone, and during our weekly team calls, one of my coworkers would always send him a giant email with an attachment, and it would knock him off. And you know, the technology is a little better now, but you know, you can absolutely run it over anything, but you know, you may get cell phone quality like on a bad day. I mean, so you want to look, you know, can the infrastructure support it? Is it congested anywhere? Do I have any hubs? You know, in an ideal world, you have voice over IP. I mean, you have power over Ethernet to provide power to the phones, but that's not strictly required either. You know, so there's a lot of things that you can not do, but you have to decide that, you know, the trade-off on, is that worth it to me? You know, or is it very important that I have very high quality voice all the time, and architect the infrastructure to support that?
Yeah, but that's very, very, very good. At the same time, we need to be clear that you don't need to have rock solid, everything fully secure MPLS type connections. Today's technology is far advanced than it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. Today's audio codec, 711, G711, as you mentioned, Debbie, it's a great codec, but pretty much is a history at this moment, because the new codecs are being far more resilient to the packet losses. And that's why the requirement to have MPLS absolutely doesn't stand anymore. Even simple over-the-top connections works very well. I mean, today we are witnessing people having a big conference calls with hundreds of people on the call using very low bandwidth connections, and still the quality is remarkable. And that's the beauty of today's technology, of the new codecs that are being developed as we speak, that packet losses, of course, we want to avoid. Very important to have network, as all of you said, that we don't know packet losses. But even in the worst cases, I mean, we have deployed solutions using satellite communication. Satellite, the middle name of satellite is packet loss. And 5 years ago, that would be an impossible thing to do. Today, actually, our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan are using our technology to satellite connections very reliably with great quality, and that's the beauty of today's technology, that not many people actually are fully understanding how fast technology is going and why the IP and the cloud and it can go really over in normal internet, house internet, whatever it is, and be really, really good quality.
Hey guys, we're getting a ton of questions in from the audience already, so I wanted to go ahead and start taking them. This first one comes from user Yikes123. At least I hope that's his username and not his password. And so, Greg, let's start with you. How do I convince my boss to go VoIP? That's a question we get a lot. The technology is really cool. How do I sell my management on it?
Sure. The first thing I'll come to that individual and say, how do you want to just use this as your work phone? Let's look at your current infrastructure. What do you have in place right now? How can we make that system better for you? What are you guys going to do when we have another blizzard snowstorm outside? You guys can't get into your office. How are you going to pitch that to your management team to be able to work fully from home? You can either use a mobile device, or you can use a tablet, an iPhone or a tablet at home, or you can use your PC to just work remotely. Or without voice over IP technology, you have the ability to take your physical desk phone, take it home, plug it into your internet connection, as long as you have an AC adapter, and it'll work well, just like Ivor communicated before. There's different type of codecs can set up that will have superior voice quality and use low bandwidth capabilities over technology.
Right, and you need to find that one or two things that's going to get them excited. You know, you might be excited because it's cool, but if you can get them excited that we can add call queuing capability so sales won't be missing calls, or better, you know, hunt group capability so that, you know, so we can set up a help desk internally and distribute calls that we weren't able to do before. You know, you need to find some capability, or as he said, you know, the mobility is huge, cost savings obviously, and you know, you can also get into a model where you have fixed known monthly costs rather than you know, having to pay for moves, adds, and changes, and having to, you know, worry about yearly maintenance and things like that. So, but you have to find, you know, the button that's going to work for the boss.
I think it's the flexibility as well, and Greg, you're right, you know, absolutely key points there. And you can see from behind me, I don't work in an office. In fact, I haven't worked in an office for the last 16 years. It probably shows, I know, but I do travel quite a bit. Otherwise, I would go absolutely stir crazy. But I do travel the globe, and the benefits just outweigh. You cannot be stuck in what you've got today. It's that freedom of movement. It's the ability to expand your talent pool. And as Greg says very eloquently, is what happens if you have a blizzard? Well, I'm in Florida, but you know, we have to go up to Walt Disney World for that. But we have hurricanes and things like that. So it's those elements that are going to really be your drivers. But also, I think one other area is it's not all a capex expense now. You don't have to say it's $50,000. There are options for you. You can go, you know, in the cloud, you can go on-prem, you can do a hybrid. So you could move to an OPEX environment and start spreading out the budget. So there are many different ways you can do it. But I think you've heard some really key points here about some of the elements that you need to go and talk to your bosses about.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Mark on that. Well, the ROI, return on investment for customers, is something that they have to look at and figure out how much money they're going to save while we're moving to a voice over IP infrastructure. And as Mark mentioned, everything now is pretty much no capex, and it works out well for the customer.
All right. Got another question from Brian9095. Albert, let's start with you. Who's asking, you know, basically, do you see more companies with voice system being on-premise or cloud-based or hybrid? And maybe you can elaborate more on kind of what types of customers should be looking at each of these approaches.
Yeah, excellent question. Cloud is still a new thing. Many people believe that, particularly looking when 8x8 started 10 or 15 years ago and saying we are going to be a leader in cloud communication, many people says no way that can be done. Technology just simply can't do something in the cloud that requires short timely responses as the voice is. Today we know that cloud is, in our opinion, a way to go. We see that everybody more and more, if anybody goes to these enterprise conferences, when cloud was almost a kind of small thing maybe a few years ago, today is the main way to go. Anybody can afford to move to cloud. All the vendors are moving because it just means simplicity. It means flexibility. It means, as all of you already said, Mark and Debbie and Craig, not upfront cost for any on-premise equipment. Pretty much, you sign up for the deal, you can use it the same moment wherever you are. Is it from home, or is it in a train, or even today in the plane? Theoretically, you can use it if airline will allow us to use it. I mean, often we have technology, of course, that we can use in the plane, but unfortunately that's not allowed, and of course airline wants to use their equipment to communication and make some money. So we fully understand them, but the technology is beyond it. Technology really can go a long way no matter where you are, and that's why we believe the cloud is the way to go, particularly for the companies that have distributed enterprises, that have offices opening and closing and growing in different areas of the world. I mean, currently, for instance, we have customers that have offices in 122 countries in the world. I don't know how many, I believe 144 countries in the world exist. So with such companies with so many different offices, premise would not be a solution. And that's why we, again, sorry for repeating myself, we believe that cloud is the way to go and the future of unified communication.
Albert, you make it sound like green eggs and ham. Like I would use VoIP on a plane, I would use it on a train. Anyone else have anything to add as far as cloud versus on-premise versus
Jason, I can see you snapping a bit there.
Well, yeah,
Justin,
I think both. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just going to share. I mean, Albert brings up a lot of different scenarios there. You know, at WestUC, when it comes to whether it's cloud, whether it's on-prem, or whether it's a hybrid, we produce the solution that best fits the customer. And obviously, when we're a global provider, we're in the enterprise space, there are a lot of opportunities that we move into a hybrid deployment depending on what resources need to be on-prem, what that solution looks like. From a pure regulatory perspective, there's not one VoIP provider in the world that can provide services in 200 countries. It's just from a regulatory perspective, it's not there. So sometimes it's going to require things like keeping a hybrid solution so you can originate or terminate actual phone calls in country versus bringing them in a pooled environment. So we utilize the technology that's needed to provide the solution that best fits the customer in an effort to provide them the efficiencies they need. So I think it's very important to do that. And we talked about network a little bit earlier as well. And I think it's important to put out that it doesn't matter how much bandwidth you have. You can have a gig worth of internet access at your site. That doesn't mean that one particular phone call is going to have pure voice, perfect quality. You can still have issues. So it's important when you're looking at that and looking at your networks, not at how much bandwidth you have, but what your bandwidth looks like, and that you do have quality bandwidth that doesn't have jitter, latency, and packet loss, things that affect voice over IP. So those are the important things that I feel to look at.
I want to just dovetail into that, Jason, if I don't mind. And again, brilliant points, because I think the cloud is a choice. It's a deployment choice, and it's not for everybody. It's an alternative, but it's not for everyone. And I think having that hybrid, as Jason says, is absolutely key, and it gives people a stepping stone. I mean, if we look at what we can do in our deployments, yes, you can do on-premise, you can do it in the cloud, but also you can do a hybrid. So a customer could look at, yeah, I want those phones on-prem. I want my customers to come in on SIP trunks, because that's going to guarantee the voice quality, absolutely guarantee it. But I want my applications hosted somewhere else, my contact center applications, my soft clients, they can be hosted. So I think a hybrid is a great blend of being able to provide the VoIP through the cloud and also the on-prem.
All right. Well, let's go to the next question. This is from Kyle, who's asking, and maybe Mark will actually go to you again. In a typical scenario, what should a VoIP DR plan look like? Daily VM backups, high availability, landline failover? What is kind of your recommended approach as far as disaster recovery for high availability for VoIP systems?
Sorry, was that to me, Jason?
Yeah. Sorry, that's to you still, Mark.
Oh, sorry. What? You broke up there. That must have been the voice.
Sorry. Yeah, there you go. Did you catch the question?
I sort of caught it.
Disaster recovery for VoIP. What are your recommendations?
Well, there are. I mean, it depends if you're going to go cloud or if you're going to go in on-premise. I mean, if you're going on-premise, there are several things you can obviously do, and that's to have backup servers on-premise, or if you're in a multi-site environment, you can have backup servers across the network. And I think Jason was, you'll be talking about MPLS and the importance of that when you're backing up across networks. But I think there are several options, and a lot of it's going to really depend upon your budget as well. It's and really what size company you are and the importance you place on high availability. So there are many options that you can have, whether it's full redundancy and have systems basically on hot standby, or it literally is a sort of a failover to another location, or as Greg said earlier, in those scenarios where you could actually deploy staff at home, for example, and if they can't come into the office, there's another element of high availability is right there. So it's actually a very broad question, Justin, about high availability and failover.
Sure, and if I can add on, I think we're talking about from a Fusion standpoint. When we go to a customer site, as I alluded to earlier, we talked about the different failover options. Like we bring in a dedicated circuit for voice quality. We have the ability to fail over to their ISP connection as a secondary backup for. But really, our voice services can go over anybody's broadband connection. I think we need to also look at the ability. What happens if there's a catastrophic event happening at that customer site? What's the next solution for that customer? And once again, it's mobility. the find me, follow me functions, that being able to function without having an actual desk phone or on any type of on-premise PBX system is pretty much how we deploy that. We pretty much push all the find me, follow me features for our customers to be able to take, leadership and be able to go out and be able to use all those features. Everything from simultaneous ring to being able to just use their cell phone and have the soft phone capability to make calls, make changes through any type of call forwarding settings directly through that mobile application. So there's no requirement for, that's the actual failover for voice over IP.
And that's a very good point, Greg, because not only that you have redundancy, it's important to have multiple levels of redundancy in disaster recoveries. So for one, as you said, follow me, and if one line is not able to be connected, immediately forward to other line, whatever other carrier, or even to a cell phone if needed. But at the same time, having redundancy on the server side, having all duplicate switches, having all duplicate data centers. So for instance, at 8x8, we have multiple data centers around the world, and the main rule is that no data center can at any moment have more than 50% capacity taken care of, because in any moment, if any data center will fail, all the communication from the data center needs to be routed to the nearest other data center. And that's kind of the ultimate data recovery, in addition to all other elements that happens, because we need to be ready even if there is a very big disaster happening in one area of the world, how to route all the traffic to areas that the traffic is still okay, and therefore minimize any impact to the customers of any business size or nature.
Here's a follow-up question from Jay Baker VT, kind of about availability. Maybe Greg, we'll start with you, but if you've got a need for phones that can never be out, so for example, electric company, police, emergency lines, can you still recommend hosted voice over IP?
Sure, we have customers that deploy that, but most of the times we do require, we do push them towards POTS lines, especially for alarm and elevator lines. If there's a power outage, you still want to have that capability and technology, but we can still support those alarm line capabilities.
Well, and I would say, it is something you have to look at. You want to guarantee a good experience. We actually won't sell VoIP again for, elevator phones, for example, because you're stuck in there. Your cell phone won't work either. We don't recommend it for alarms, machines. What I like to say is voice over IP is for voice. It's not for machines to talk to each other. And there's a lot of things, a lot of technologies now. If somebody's got an analog point of sale system that they're used to running on their POTS line, a lot of that now can be, converted to internet type systems anyway, at the right time, and keep the POTS lines there for a little while until you're ready to make that change.
Yeah, and I agree with Debbie, but also a lot of alarm companies now, what they're actually deploying a backup internet solution as a phone type solution for them. So, a lot of customers just move away from POTS lines. Spending X amount of dollars for one POTS line is no longer feasible. So that's why a lot of customers are now moving to a voice over IP solution. And I totally agree about the elevator. That's why we strongly, highly recommend it. But sometimes you do get those customers that are adamant in what they actually want. But we can go in there, we can put an ATA to connect that to the elevator right along. But once again, we let them know up front if there's a power issue, they are susceptible to being down, and now they'll be making emergency calls out in the system. But it's highly recommended for elevator lines that we do go over a POTS line solution.
Yeah, those are very good points, Greg, and all customers need to be fully aware of the power failures and have that backup for the urgency needs. While at the same time, I think most people now know that technology has gone also quite well, and reliability of the IP telephony is quite high. For instance, at 8x8, we have uptime of 99.997%, which means that throughout the year, maybe a system is down for 10 minutes, and then typically is during the night when there's some updates and something happening. So absolutely the technology and reliability has gone up quite a bit, and we need to be always aware of all the different use cases and what is the best interest for the customers, how to deploy VoIP, and what else they need to do to ensure full coverage on all sides.
Hey Justin, just to kick back just a second toward I think the actual question, when the question was asked around analog services when it comes to alarms and elevators and things like that. There are still devices out there that are still built with older technology around analog services. So it's not always a good idea to try to take VoIP technology and turn it back into analog. They make ATAs and things that do that, but we typically find that they're okay. They're not great at times, especially with older analog modem type things. You typically have some particular issues with that. But if you've noticed, most of the things like alarm systems that people have mentioned, whether it's door openers, things like that, have now all have an IP option. So the ability to move to the IP option and use that or use a SIP type handoff is a much better solution than trying to take and adhere to an old technology. You know, I think that if the question's not in here somewhere, I would be surprised that someone doesn't ask about faxing. Faxing's always been a challenge on voice over IP type solutions. So how do you fix that? There's faxing solutions that take SIP handoff and the ability to deliver that way. So it's just one of those things I think that you kind of focus on the technologies and as they change and try to make sure that you're using the technology that best fits that application.
Well, while we're on this topic, funny enough, we have got a couple of faxing questions, so maybe now's a good time to take those. And Jason, I think since you brought it up, we'll have you take that.
Yeah, let me just take that. Because that goes so far and beyond what people think. People think that they get a voice over IP solution, and some people will say that they can provide faxing. It goes beyond that. It goes how many times that is being translated across the network and everything. You know, if for instance, West UC, in the ability, if everything's mapped right and it works exactly like it should, then you can provide a pure SIP faxing, like T38 faxing from the carrier across our network to the device out to the fax machine. If something's changed along the way, you risk the ability to potentially cause, an issue with the fax transmission. So, yeah, I just think that VoIP carriers tend to chase themselves with trying to ensure that faxing is working 100% of the time. It's something. It's probably easier even handled in a managed network on-premise type solution, that it's set up, it's left alone, and it's not changed. But when you're dealing with multiple, the wide area network providing the actual dial tone on the other end of the cloud and everything else, that's where some of the challenges come up. So it's something to kind of watch out. We've got direct fax services, but we have straight, like T38 type SIP connections coming in from the carriers, and those faxes come in great. Hit the fax servers, deliver out via email, switches the technology and puts it in a manner that's better supported in today's day.
Yeah, following up.
And for the small business, if it's not mission critical, high volume faxing, our advice is 90% of the time it's going to work. But you may have to set your fax machine to a lower speed, and there's going to be some older and some super newer ones that aren't going to work well just for putting an analog terminal adapter on hosted VoIP, for example. So it is a problem area, and it can be done, but it's worth looking at why you still need faxing and what other, if you can use a fax server, if you can use T.38 off the trunk, or what options you have.
And if I could add,
a lot of the I was going to say, a lot of the multifunctional machines too today will support the newer technology. So again, you're kind of getting away from the older type fax machines. It's kind of fixing itself as as technology emerges.
Yeah. So as I was going to allude to, so Fusion, we definitely can support that. We can definitely support the T.38 over ATA applications. But most of the times we go in there and we understand the customer's requirements, and we pretty much have our own IP faxing solution. And that's the technology that most customers should look forward to moving with, instead of going with an old, outdated IP fax machine. Of course, you still have those customers that still want to keep those appliances, but IP faxing is the solution that they should move to. It's just like moving from voice over IP from POTS lines.
Related to that, actually, is a lot of folks have paging systems. They have paging out in the warehouse or in their store or something like that, and a lot of those can also be supported with an analog terminal adapter, converting from hosted VoIP service. Not every single one, and you have to figure out, do you need an FXS port or an FXO, and do you need an intermediate device? But we do have success supporting it. I mean, it's interesting how, we can say it's old technology, you should move on to something new, but we very much want to support what our customers really need. So we've developed the expertise on being able to do that as well.
A lot of time the customers don't even know the new technology. That's why most of the time you have to educate them on the new products and what's being offered in the world.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just had an additional question. Someone was asking about having to do faxing over SIP and was running into trouble. Does anyone have any recommendations on ways to kind of better improve that? Nothing.
So Debbie said it well. I mean,
kind of a vague. Are they talking about through a PBX, or are they talking about directly through a fax machine itself?
It sounded like directly from a fax machine. But okay, well, let's switch gears a little bit. We're getting a lot of questions about security, and I know that's obviously a big topic for all of you guys. Let me find one question in particular. This question comes from Joshua, and maybe Albert, we'll start with you. And he's asking, how do each of you guys manage SIP security? Do you merely suggest managing endpoint security for cloud VoIP, or is a SIP gateway suggested for remote installations?
Yeah, excellent question. So security, of course, it's a very, very important part and the definition that every company needs to take, particularly in these days when all these different hackers from all around the world are trying to breach into many of these companies. That's why we are very proud that we take security very, very seriously. We often say that security is our middle name, as a company 8x8 started from encrypting audio and video back in the day. And that's why with our patents in security and different protection we have along all different layers, it's very important part of the business. To be more precise, security starts not only with how it's used, starts with development. How you develop the code to be secure, how to be done in a way that meets all these, the most modern, most secure regulations, and to be very, very protective of these different malicious attacks. Then, of course, second thing is how you protect your PBX, your data center. So being able to work, of course, behind all the major firewalls, working in very secure environment is very, very important. Having all these protections against DDoS attacks and so on. Most people, of course, we're all very afraid of DDoS attacks because nobody knows what the limit is, and with all these precautions, you never know how good it is until you're attacked. And that's why 8x8 and we are working very closely with NSA and top security offices in US to see what are the most efficient way how to protect from these different attacks. And we are happy that when we have these, and we have few attacks in the last 12 months, and all of them were so easily defended that we believe that we are really, the technology is still very well on our side. But then on top of it, of course, from the customer, what does it really security means? Do they, as I said earlier, do they need to use MPLS to really have full private communication? Absolutely not. Because very important is that all communication always starts from the endpoint itself. So no communication can start from outside, and that's why nobody can easily breach into the company's premises from outside, because all these ports is a UDP, is a specific TCP port, needs to be always blocked and always blocking inbound communication. And only when the phone inside wants to create the channel, that's where communication starts and the session is open. And then on top of it, why not to use encrypted communication? So using SRTP, secure RTP, it's very, very well working today, and using, of course, a TLS over SIP to really make sure that all signaling is encrypted. So pretty much if you put all these different elements, you have extremely powerful solution, very secure, very reliable, and so far you cannot really find a way how to break it. To put one other note, we have a special team at 8x8 that main purpose is try to break into our own solution, try to find a way, and of course we pay them very high money to be able to be the top guys, and so far we are winning every single time. Pretty much security today is at a very high level, and thanks to all work from different industries, from finance industries, from, of course, NSA that drives many of these activities, security is brought to a level that has never been at.
Yeah, and if I can add on what Albert just said there too, I totally agree, Albert, what you're saying there. I agree with the different type of security requirements we can set up there, the encryptions, SSL as well as TLS. But we can also set, with dedicated circuits, we can set up IPsec tunnels directly from Pellets. Here at Fusion, we have a large amount of customers that have those different requirements that want encryption over all their voice packets, and we have that capability of providing that for our customers.
Yeah, and I think there's just to add to that as well, Greg, is with remote work, is simply put a session border controller out there as a gateway. You just literally put a gateway out there, session border controllers, or indeed VPNs if you're still away inclined. So that's an easy way out to protect that circuit out there.
Well, and we actually recommend if you're doing IQ SIP or SIP trunk, having a session border controller, but not necessarily just for security. Because SIP is not a incredibly precisely defined standard, what the on-premise phone system IPPBX speaks and what the provider's SIP trunk speaks may have slight variations, and the SBC gives you that capability to marry the two properly, for all different situations. We don't require it, but we do recommend an SBC. And the other interesting thing with security and VoIP is the interaction with the firewall. So one of the in an ideal world, I mean, in the basic operation of a firewall, it is normally set up so that it's expecting responses back to queries that went out. So you query to get a web page and you get a response back. Well, SIP has the interesting characteristic that you get incoming calls unsolicited. You get RTP streams, your real-time transport protocol, which carries your audio. You get those coming in on different ports than the SIP messages. So there's sort of two basic approaches. One is most firewalls and even little DSL modems, et cetera, have a SIP application layer gateway or have an intelligence built in to deal with that. Part of the problem, though, if you run into a SIP problem at your home, is some of those are just limited implementation. So we say, so sometimes your actual best option is actually to just turn off the SIP proxy or turn off the SIP application layer gateway. And then CenturyLink in particular uses a method called hosted NAT traversal, where you can still, where our cloud does the right thing and realizes that there's not a firewall there, an application layer gateway, and will, do changes to make sure that the traffic can still get through despite the firewall.
Anyone else to add as far as security? We can come back to security later. I did want to ask a question. This comes from Aldrin, and I think that's a really good one. And Jason, we'll go back to you first. He's asking, for a company that currently doesn't have VoIP, how should the IT department prepare its infrastructure for VoIP deployment? What are the technical skills that the IT team should have to properly manage the VoIP infrastructure? Jason, maybe we'll start with you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, some of the main things, like we talked about, to ready the network. With switching to voice, we're not really talking about the, historically customers had two different groups. They had a telephony group and they had an IT group. Colliding the two together, coming to a VoIP solution, you're kind of bringing the telephony and the IT guys together, right? So it's important to make sure that the actual networks within facilities will support the solution. We've talked about a number of things, whether it's the wiring infrastructure, making sure they have Cat5 in place versus Cat3. So looking at the wiring, what that's going to look like. If they're going to utilize, a lot of your phones have shared switch ports. So are they going to utilize a single drop type scenario, or are they going to put their voice on a totally different network? By doing that, that defines how many switch ports they need. So do they have enough switching infrastructure to handle what they're looking at? Does their current switching environment handle maybe PoE if they're looking at doing power over Ethernet to devices? So that's something to look at. So when doing that in a solution like what West UC would provide and bring it in across the private networking, either West would provide the networking or connect directly into a customer's infrastructure, we'd want to be able to do things like provide different VLANs on the actual network as well. So making sure that they have routing infrastructure and switching infrastructure that'll support VLANs that will actually that are easily monitored, so that we can ensure that the quality of the voice services all the way down to the endpoint at all times. Those are kind of so that kind of all goes together, all your infrastructure from a routing, switching, and wiring perspective, and then also looking at what it's going to take from a telco perspective. In a typical hosted model, you would look at trying to pool as many of those trunks in the cloud as possible. So potentially porting that away into the cloud and delivering it back to the actual site via IP is a scenario that you'd want to do if you're looking at cutting costs, providing redundancy, and things like that. So to start getting some of that in line, that's kind of going through the provisioning process, knowing what you have at each site, identifying your user base, what that looks like, and what it'll look like going forward. Any of the voice providers or hosted providers are going to ask you to identify your user base. What do these users look like? What's the feature functionality they need? So you can identify. That often addresses the cost, right? So when you're moving to that kind of OpEx model, you want to make sure that you're paying for what you need, not just paying for a premium type service. So it's important to kind of look at those things as well.
Yeah, and if I can
I
add
think so, Jason.
what Jason just said there, so a little bit added on. So from a future standpoint, we definitely go through all the different requirements with the end user. We talk to we actually do technical calls with them. We go a little further. We actually present network diagrams. So we take a deep dive and we provide a customer a whole layout based on their entire network. We design it, we show them, we give them a Visio diagram, implementing all the new equipment that's going to be in there. We even work with them creating what subnets are going to be used for the different VLANs or routing schemes in the actual networks. But then we want to go a little bit further, because most of the time when you're presenting a voice over IP to a solution for an administrator of the system, you want to make it as easy as possible to be able to implement that through the system. They're moving away from a PBX that they're familiar with, so we pretty much go in there, we do demos for them. We show them our administrator portal. We show them how easy it is to open up a web browser and simply be able to go in there and add new users, do MAC request changes, make it as simple as possible for those users to be comfortable in moving over to a voice over IP platform.
And also what I think is important. So you want to go, Mark?
Yeah, go on then. I'll have a quick crack. So the other way is, I mean, because we work with partners and they're very skilled at what they do, and so we put our equipment out there. But another way is actually the question that we get is, will my network support it, because it's only a few years old, and I've already invested in the network, and oh God forbid they're going to have to swap it all out. But they can put traffic analyzers in there and inject traffic over, and so add what we call is a network assessment. So our partners will basically do a network assessment on-prem, and this is basically doing VoIP over on the premise. So that's the one things that our partners will do. And in other cases that they'll do a hybrid on-site. So we'll have a bunch of phones that are IP, so you've got VoIP on-site on the LAN, but then other areas you simply can't put drops in. Whether it might be an older building, or you can't put LAN drops out to these sites. So we can actually do a hybrid of VoIP and traditional voice lines on site. But another way, the partners will basically do a network analysis, a network assessment on those premise sites.
Yeah, and to add to that, what we found is the best way for these companies to find out if network is ready, to give them a small tool that they can apply to any PC, laptop, whatever they have, and just press one button, and that tool does all the investigation and analysis what their network does. And we find it because when we work with many of these smaller companies, mama and papa shops, they don't have the dedicated IT folks. So that's why they are not technical. They don't even know what IP means and how does it work. A router, they never heard of what really that means. So really giving them one small app and a green button to press, this is what really makes it quite convenient, because automatically application sends us all the data of the packet loss, what is the jitter, what is the trace route, and everything else, and then we can pinpoint exactly what the customer needs to do, if they need to do anything else to be prepared. And that kind of changes the entire approach how to do it. Back in the day, in order to manage the telephony, you need to have a dedicated team, skilled team to know how to do the different implementation, setup, and so on. Today, it's all seamless. Everything is remote. Everything's in the cloud, and only minimal skills are needed on the customer side to do it, and often no technical skills at all. And that's kind of where I believe the future goes, and how it needs to be very, very seamless. Because, for instance, if you look at the Facebook, they don't ask you, okay, what is your network assessment in order to use our app? No, everything needs to be seamless for the end user, and that's exactly where the world is going.
And we actually can carry it even further. We have a bundle with our hosted VoIP that we call Managed Office, where we will provide the LAN switches in addition to, the network, the WAN and the VoIP and the phones. And so we can provide the whole picture so that, if someone does have much older LAN or wants something that, they know, one throat to choke, we can provide the LAN as well.
Mm-hmm. One throat to choke or one back to pat, as they like to say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyone else have anything to add? Okay. Let's go on.
In terms of, just, at the very detail level, when you have an IP phone, like with a hosted solution, what it really needs to know is, how do I talk to the mothership? Where do I get my configuration? Where do and a lot of these now, the phones, will download their latest configuration automatically. They will even download their latest firmware. So as long as you can point them, give them a URL to their server in the cloud and the DNS to resolve that to an IP address, or just an IP address if you prefer, that's something you can do with your DHCP on your network or manually configure in the phones. And pretty much once they can get out to their mothership and start to communicate, then they're very self-sufficient. The phones generally are. And again, as the other folks said, you want the VoIP traffic to not suffer at the hands of all your video,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube videos and other, work going on the network.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I've got a question about quality of service, and I think there's a couple of nuances to this. I've got one question asking about how to implement firewalls and still maintain quality of service, and I think we're also getting a lot of questions about getting quality of service over a wide area network. So, Debbie, maybe you can kind of handle those first. Any recommendations on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Quality of service is very important. Yes, 9 times out of 10, you may be fine without quality of service, but that 10th time, or if you're, in a bad setup or you've got a lot of network traffic, you don't want to be at the mercy of, hoping that things are going to work well. So what this is about is marking the packets, at the phones or on your switch to identify the SIP traffic and the audio and video traffic, the RTP streams, and then having the policies at every step of the way to prioritize the voice, both, typically on the WAN, like if you get a service from CenturyLink and you get internet or private circuit from CenturyLink, on the wide area network connection between CenturyLink and your on-premise router or firewall, typically compared to your LAN, that's a small connection. And so you want to prioritize the traffic coming out of your firewall so voice doesn't wait around. And on the flip side, you want CenturyLink to prioritize the traffic on the edge router facing your premise as well. And if you're on Ethernet local access, you can get different quality of service so that any Ethernet switches it goes through on the Ethernet local access, that is also prioritized and honors those QoS markings. And again, it's not required, but if you want the good, guarantee of a good experience, then that is definitely recommended.
Yeah, and if I can add on, from a future standpoint, everybody wants, I think we all agree on this call here that pretty much when you go to a customer site, you want to bring in your own dedicated circuit that you can provide superior quality of service for all the voice calls you're going to be routing over a customer network. Well, number one, you want your customer to be, satisfied with your quality of service of all the voice packets you're actually delivering over that network. But of course, occasionally we do have those customers that pretty much don't want a circuit. They want to have their voice over IP router with their own dedicated broadband connection. Well, that's fine, Mr. Customer. We definitely can do that for you. We will bring in a gateway by exactly what Debbie alluded to. We can prioritize those voice packets over your LAN network. Pretty much it's just going to be for upload. Anything that's going to be downloaded over a customer's broadband connection is pretty much just open packets. We have no control over that. But we pretty much try to build a solution based around, those different environments of what the customer is looking for. But also to keep in mind, we also need to factor in bandwidth. What are the bandwidth requirements the customers have? How many users are at those locations? You have to look at the packet size for each voice call compared to how many concurrent calls this customer is looking for. You might have a DSL circuit that has low bandwidth requirements and they have 20 users in the office. Those particular customers might experience some type of voice quality issues because it's kind of hard to try to troubleshoot or even prioritize voice packets over those small, DSL connections. But we do have the technology to work with and make it as supportable as possible.
Anyone else to add? Okay. I've got a question from Kip, who's asking, once deployment is done, how do you continue to get training? I think this is especially, important as far as educating the end users that are going to be using it. Maybe Greg, we'll start with you. What advice do you have as far as education, both for internal IT as well as for end users, kind of beyond deployment?
Sure. So here at Fusion, we have a wide variety of different type of training that we can do. We can go on site and train customers. We can break it out into different type of sessions, and we also can do webinars directly through our web collaboration tool that we offer. We can, have as many customers join those webinars. We could do those on-site training, but we also go a little further for all customers that can't be there. You're always going to have some customers, their employees, they can't make it to those training. Well, you know what we offer? We offer online tutorials where they can go in there on their own pace, be able to look at those videos over and over and learn all about the different features of the phones, the different soft phone capabilities. We have that technology.
Yep, likewise, Greg, we've got the same sort of thing. I mean, training is absolutely paramount because you get so many complaints about it. But likewise, Greg, there's things online to continue your education, online tools as well. All of our applications that are soft-based applications, like you say, Greg, there's online help right there, included within it. So it's paramount, and so many companies overlook that.
Absolutely, very important that you train your end users how to be efficient in everything they do, as well as the administrators.
Yeah, that's key.
Debbie, did you have something to add? Debbie, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have the same thing, and we do have administrator training and user training, both online webinars, and you can do in-person training as well. And there are a lot of features and capabilities that aren't obvious to the casual observer, so the training is very important. And getting people feeling comfortable. You can also, sort of related to this, you can start deployment, say, with a small group of people or a pilot, and get them comfortable and get the IT folks comfortable supporting them. And you need the training as well in a large organization for the help desk folks who are going to be answering the questions, and my phone doesn't work, or something doesn't work, or I don't know how to do this, or so having training for those folks and thinking through everybody that needs to understand the system is important.
Yeah, I concur with all of this. I think there's all very, very well proven technologies how to make this user adoption as seamless as it could be. Because looking at the entire different type of customers, you have really these youngsters, new generations. They don't want to sit in the class to listen to a training, and they want to use it right away. They are mobile. They don't want to sit in the chair for more than 5 minutes. And of course, it needs to be very flexible training to be able for them to use it. At the same time, the older workforce, they require different type of training, and that's really adoption, as Craig and Debbie, as you said very well. You need to have different means in order to provide the most efficient user adoption. But of course, that user adoption doesn't go with go live. That is part of the previous to go live, and also after go live, continuous checkup, continuous communication. At 8x8, we have customer success team. Their primary objective is to work with the customer, work with the end users to ensure that they're using the system the most efficient way, and of course to help them adopt to a new technology. Because it's not always easy. We all understand for somebody who's been using the phone for 20 years and always using the same way, now jumping to something completely different. Yes, great technologies are great, but some people need time to adopt to it, and of course that's really a very, very important part of the entire business and implementation of any new solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll finish on that one, Justin, very briefly.
Yeah.
Make it easy to use. Fortunately, our applications, make it intuitive and don't miss the mark. That's really what the bottom line is. Just make it easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have system designers that work with the customers too to set up the lines on their phones the way they expect it, to set up the hunt groups to ring, to set up the find me, follow me to go where they expect it, and so that they can get, because these systems are so customizable, to get the system the way they would like to see it. And then, of course, the customers can tweak it and we can help them later as well.
I've got kind of a good kind of wind down question from Layer 3 Guru, who they're looking for a new vendor. What are some major items that we should be asking for? What are the kind of the must-have things that folks should be asking about from their VoIP vendors? And Jason, we'll start with you again.
Well, I think that if they're looking for a new vendor, then they need to look for someone that provides the services that they're looking at. Obviously we've talked about there's cloud-based offerings, there's on-premise-based offerings. West UC happens to be a cloud-based offering, which is really taking everything from a CapEx and making it an OpEx. So if someone's really looking to move to the cloud, when you're looking at voice over IP services, sometimes the common thought is that it's always a cost savings. It's not always a cost savings. You really have to weigh out feature functionality and the services that you're looking for. If you're really looking to maximize from a feature functionality perspective, the ability to upgrade without having to spend additional money, staying up to date with the latest and greatest in technology, then you're going to want to look at the cloud and look at a cloud type provider. Looking for the highest levels of redundancy, the ability to from a global perspective, not looking at, we talked about that as well, being able to hit different cloud solutions from a global perspective and talk across a common platform. With West UC is also we're a managed service provider, so we offer all sorts of other applications around contact centers and conferencing and IVR services and things like that. And as you move into that VoIP brim, you move into a perspective of being able to take advantage and leverage other IP type solutions and whether it's CRMs or what that might be, but being able to tie those all back. So finding someone that you're comfortable with, that provides the services that you're looking at, that has your best interest in place. And I think it all boils down to the core components of voice over IP services. If you're in the enterprise space and you're not, your enterprise type customer is going to be different than your SMB or your small to medium business type customer. So it's important to know where you play and do your research. Look at Gartner, look at some of the other reports that are out there, and look at the leaders in those quadrants and really identify who it is that you should be talking to. And I think it'll pretty well lay itself out.
Yeah, and I could cover that. And they're also in the platform. So here at Fusion, one of the things that we do pride ourselves on is that we do go to a customer site, we learn their requirements, but we learn also what we can do to make their system better. We talked about CRM, so we do have the capability of doing CRM integrations. A lot of customers already have those different type of CRMs. Well, our platform can support those different type of API integrations smoothly for customers. So we want to look at the customer, what they have, we want to make it better for them. We want to provide them with the best solution possible to make them happy moving over to a voice over IP platform.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Greg. Very important to understand the full set of requirements, not just simple phone, how that integrates with the other aspects of the solution. And CRMs, of course, is a very important part because most companies do have some type of CRM. So the ultimate solution is have all these different applications integrated into one solution. Is it just a voice, contact center? Is it a CRM? All integrated together, and that's very important part of the offering. Of course, in addition to that kind of feature functionalities and capabilities, very important, as we discussed earlier, is understand the security aspect of it, reliability, and of course, finally, the quality of service. Because even if all functionality is good, but the voice quality is not good in all conditions, then really the behavior will not be very, very good for any customer.
I just want to finish on that note, and I agree with all the points here, but I think it's also, and Greg, you've said it many times, is understanding their requirements. I think if you can look for a vendor that's going to grow with you, because Jason said about enterprise and SMB, absolutely, and their needs are going to be different, but look for a vendor that will grow with you in capacity, but also capability as well, like mobility solutions, contact center, CRM. As your needs grow, you need to evolve with it. And also, and I'm a little bit biased, but look for a vendor that's going to give you choice. And that choice is either on-premise, it's either in the cloud, or it could be a combination of both, and you will eventually migrate to cloud. So you've got to have a vendor that's going to give you those flexible options and really grow with you.
Right, I agree. I mean, CenturyLink, you can get from one seat to tens of thousands, and have the add-ons of the the contact center and IVR and IP long distance and toll free and all the pieces you need, and the network, and but it really comes down to what does your enterprise want to accomplish, and where do you think you're going to be in 3 to 5 years as well, and having the system that will support everything you want to do now and in the future.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and take one last question before we wrap up totally. And this one is one that we get a lot, and it's basically, so maybe Mark, we'll start with you. What do you feel like are going to be the next big advancements in VoIP technology over the next few years?
Well, hopefully I'll be retired by then, Justin. Give me this crystal ball. I think that a lot of it is going to be around the mobile office, around the mobility features. I think there's, we talk about, and I think a lot of it, so it's going to be around mobility, letting people work from where they want, when they want. And we've got some great examples of businesses saving $60,000 a year by using voice over Wi-Fi, going out to Japan and places. But I think it's expanding that office, and it's also, I think, integrating to desktop solutions like 365, Link, Skype for Business, those other areas that are prevalent out there. It's managing that integration and just making it really seamless to be able to use those applications, and basically communications enable those. And I don't, that's not long term. I mean, that's stuff that obviously, that we can do now, but I think it's being able to really be fully mobile office.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Any other big predictions?
I just agree with Mark. As I said before, this is the future technology that we're moving to, not through product, but everybody wants it. This is pretty much the industry that they're moving for. All the millennials want this technology. Desk phones will probably be a thing of the past. If you think back when rotary phones were pretty much failing, that's pretty much the past. Desk phones are moving in that same realm. Everything's going to be mobile within the next 10 years, and we have to be prepared and ready for that solution for our customers.
Well, and one of the things with mobile combined with the VoIP is, one of the things businesses struggle with is their workers are mobile, and their customers, have a relationship with that telephone number of the mobile phone of the salesperson or their rep or their contact, and then that salesperson leaves the company and takes everyone with them. So one of the things you can do with a soft phone app is have, when you call from the app, it's your office main number that shows up. It's not your cell phone number. And so, the customer doesn't care where you are, but the point is you have that one identifier that is tied to the business rather than tied to the individual that, provides that that contact, and, provides a lot of other capabilities to transfer calls and conference people in and have a unified voicemail and that sort of thing. But yeah, I do think that, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and it's all correct. And to add to it, it's in addition to that technology, of course, it's very mobile, very different than it is today. The integration with other services, I believe, will be the biggest kind of next step. How that all seamlessly works together, that you don't have to have a simple call and call somebody, that you can use any medium of communication, simple message, is it from your Facebook page or whatever you use, and then all goes into the one unified communication. That's, I think, the ultimate solution that is going to affect many of our lives. And I'm sorry, Mark, but I don't believe you'll retire by then, because it's coming really around the corner.
Well, right, and you can get that now.
And that's what we're going to see. That, in my mind, now big enterprises are starting using cloud technology. Something that maybe only 2 years ago was something that's completely forbidden. Look at one of our customers, Regis, with 300,000 endpoints, and leveraging our cloud communication, and very, very happily with all their clients that they used to. So we are going to see, I'm very, very certain, that almost all big enterprises will be using, including the militaries, because today we use very closely with US DoD, and they are jumping on the cloud communication as well, because this is the future. This is the technology that is secure, reliable, and of course very, very innovative, and of course very efficient to use. And that's what I see happening very, very soon.
All right.
Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
Can I just share one thing? Just a little bit different approach. I mean, obviously, mobility, voice over IP, everything's kind of just really over the last, this was a much different conversation. I'm with the same company today that I was with 15 years ago. We've been providing services for the enterprise space, voice over IP, private networking the entire time. So we haven't changed our path in 15 years. But, what you're kind of seeing a lot of that none of us have talktalked about, but it's been pretty relevant. And if we take a look back at the services that we all deploy, I think you're going to see a lot of things even here in the next 5 years around WebRTC and things like that as well. You're seeing a lot of people click to dial out of the browser. The browser's not going anywhere. The desk phone may, but the browser's not at this point. Google wouldn't be spending as much money as they're spending today in Google Voice and all the applications that they're deploying if it was going anywhere. So I think that's another kind of relevant space as well, the ability to merge voice and video across web browsers and whatnot. So you're probably going to see the day that you can go straight to your browser, log right in, place a phone call, do a video call, and it follows you everywhere you go, whether it's on your mobile, whether you're sitting at the desk. So I think just following technology and where that stuff's going, it's definitely kind of in that that era. Most of the solutions we all provide today have some sort of integration plug-in, whether it's into Outlook, Salesforce, or whatnot, the ability to dial directly out of our directories and make it easier than reaching over and touching that phone. So I think you'll continue to see that technology push forward.
Sure. And I think you're going to see more and more video as well. I mean, which of course there's quite a bit, but I think you're going to see more evolution of integration of video with different types of systems and easier integration. I mean, and obviously you can just get it in a soft phone now, and you're good to go.
Absolutely, and I agree with Debbie. So I mean, right now, currently, even with a desk phone, we have the technology. You can put a video camera directly on one of our phones and peer-to-peer video call. That technology is there. With a soft phone client, you still could do the same high-definition quality video call directly to any of your end users that has that same application. So video is already here in our soft phone capabilities.
All right, guys. Well, I wanted to wrap up the show by giving you guys one last opportunity to kind of share any final takeaways that you want the folks that are here today to go home with. So, Jason, we'll start with you. Any final wrap-up thoughts or takeaways that you want people watching to go home with?
I just definitely want people, hopefully they gain something out of this and got a good idea and answer some of the questions that they maybe had around voice over IP and the technology as it exists, as well as how it's provided by some of the providers that are on the phone. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's evolving technology, but it's definitely increasing the efficiency in the way people do business, providing layers of redundancy in what they do. And really the way that we look at voice over IP and managed services is the ability to take on these services and help IT staffs focus on things that are more germane to their business and get back to what's driving the business versus focusing on the technology. So hopefully we're at least able to kind of take some of that away.
All right, Albert, let's go to you next. Any final thoughts or takeaways that you would like the folks today to go home with?
Yeah, thank you, Justin, and thank you all the other panelists. I think it was a very good discussion. My message to all the folks is not to be afraid of cloud VoIP communication, cloud unified communication. This is, as I said earlier, a way to go, very reliable, very secure, and very easy to deploy. I mean, today we know that many companies are sometimes afraid of how to change because we're using some old technology for 20 years, and change is not easy, we all understand, but we are doing the best efforts to make it very seamless, and we can go very fast. Today, one customer, we are deploying 50 sites a day. With the old technologies, that would be just a dream, but today it's reality. And of course, we can go into many more details what the technology can do and what 8x8 particularly has a patent in and very good at. So that's why I would advise anybody, if they want to know more about 8x8, can simply go to 8x8 website, or you can use the Spiceworks and contact our green gal Angela, who will be very happy to share any other information with anybody that needs it.
All right, very cool. Mark, we'll go to you next. Final thoughts for the audience today.
No, just thanks. And I was going to reiterate what Albert says. Don't be afraid of technology. But I'm going to say, I said it previously in this show that when you're looking at systems, and if you're using old technology now, you've got to embrace new technology. It's got to happen. But I said, don't be afraid of it. But also look at the deployment choices that you do have. You don't have to go full 100% IP today. You can start doing the migration plans, but look for a vendor that's going to grow those plans with you, that has the capability to go on-prem if you want to go that way. Absolutely go that way, but be assured that with the likes of Avaya, you can migrate to the cloud over time. It doesn't, so don't be afraid of looking at technology. It's all there. It's designed to be cost-effective. I mean, and that's really what it wants. When it's an earlier question about management, and how you're going to sell that to management, you've got to have the ROI. You've got to have the cost-effective solutions.
All right, Debbie, your question next. Although we have a question from Abbasi, who's asking where he can get that sweet Terminator headset that you've got, with the blinking red light.
Ah, right. It's good No, actually, yeah, this is Plantronics. It's an older one. Yes. I noticed that on the video. I'm like, okay.
And then any final thoughts for the audience today?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of choices with VoIP, and it is good, solid technology, and we and other companies are prepared to help you through that, to consult, to talk through your needs and the options, and which direction to go to help get you pointed in the right direction and help you think about all the details that are going to help make it successful. So, and with everyone else, it's I don't go for the new shiny thing just because it's there, but there are real advantages, and that's why it's so popular.
Okay. And Greg, finally to you, final thoughts and takeaways for the audience today.
Sure. Thanks, Justin. I'd like to thank everybody on the panel. We had some great questions. It was a lot of information we took back. I'm glad we had a large panel turnout today. Like I said, we did have some definitely good questions. What I would like to close with, if you guys, are looking for a solution, and as Mark alluded to, if you're looking for a provider that, if you want to start with just one location, we have customers that pretty much have multiple locations. We can do SIP trunks to those locations, and then we can bring them over to a voice over IP solution for one site at a time. We have that capability. You guys can still do 4 or 3-digit extension between all the different platforms for those locations. If you'd like to get more information about us, feel free. Please look at our website. It's at fusionconnect.com, and you can fill out our information for our sales team, and we're happy to get back to you with any inquiries that you have with our platform. Thanks again, Mark. Appreciate the time, and thank you, Justin, and everybody else on the team.
Very cool. All right, guys. Well, it is about that time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, asking all those great questions. Apologies to all the folks that we weren't able to get from your questions. We're going to be passing all those questions over to all of our panelists today, and they'll be reaching back out to you guys with some of those answers. But without further ado, I did want to announce the winners of our Lego Star Wars Imperial Destroyers. Again, those are Legos, not actual Star Wars Imperial Destroyers. But the winners of the Lego Star Destroyers are going to go to Jeremy Gamble, a.k.a. G. Hosafat, also known as the coolest Spiceworks name that I've heard of in the past while, and Sergio Avila, also known as S. Avila. Congratulations to Jeremy and Sergio. You guys are the winners of our Lego Imperial Star Destroyers. So congrats, guys. I'm sure your kids are going to love those. Reach out to Liz B in the community and let us know what address you want us to ship those to, and she will get those sent your way. I did want to thank once again all of our panel, Debbie, Greg, Mark, Albert, and Jason, as well as the respective companies that you guys represent today. Spice has always loved these types of events, and it's really great that you guys are able to participate in it. So thanks so much. We hope to have all of you guys back on sometime again real soon. Make sure to check out all of our upcoming events coming up in that red, big orange button. That has a list of all the other upcoming events, just like this one that we're going to be having coming up in the next few weeks. So make sure to check that out. Until next time, guys, though, stay safe, keep spicy, have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you guys back here next time. So long, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.